Okay, so hi everybody and welcome to the Leadership in Rugby webinar today, where we're going to be basically discussing lots of different things to do with leadership, but with a focus on women's rugby. So the webinar today is going to be led by me, and I'm the club captain at the University of Leeds Women's Rugby Union team, and it's going to be in association with the student RFU and the RFU. So we've clearly got some very inspirational people on the panel here today, so we're just going to go around and give a brief introduction. So I've said who I am, and I'll pass over to Rosie Blount.
Hi, so my name is Rosie. I'm a medical student at the University of Leeds. I've previously played for University of Leeds Rugby. I also play for DMP Durham Sharks.
And if we go to Sara Hunter.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sara Hunter. I'm a Loughborough Lightning player and England rugby captain as well. And before becoming a full-time professional rugby player, I worked for the RFU as a university rugby development officer as well.
Nice. And Kirsty Flower.
Hi, you're right. I'm Kirsten Flower. I'm currently at Loughborough studying my masters. I'm a referee hub manager here at Loughborough, and alongside that, I do the RFU National Youth Council, representing youth in rugby, and I sit on the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group.
And Katy Storie.
Hi, I'm Katy Storie. I'm the head of sport at Northumbria University. I also chair the BUCS Rugby Union Sports Advisory Group, and I used to play for England at Tighthead Prop a long time ago.
And last but not least, Sara Cox.
Yeah, so my name's Sara Cox. I'm a professional rugby referee, and I'm currently studying for a master's as well in performance enhancement of sports officials.
Cool, so that's everyone introduced. So we've got a load of kind of questions we're going to be discussing today. So I'll start it off with, I think it'd be really useful for us to begin speaking with what we've kind of accomplished over the past year despite the pandemic, and how the pandemic has actually led to new opportunities and ways to kind of engage with colleagues and teammates, which wouldn't have occurred otherwise, so basically positive that have come out of the pandemic. So for myself and for the club, when we initially heard about COVID happening, we were not very impressed. Obviously, it's been a struggle for all of us having to play contact sport during a social distancing world. They don't really come hand in hand, do they? But it's led to a lot of opportunities, like our club started a podcast where we've had a couple of well-known guests like Carol Ishwood, who founded our club and captained England and Great Britain, and also Marley Packer, who's the current flanker for England and Saracens. We sent out lockdown packs to our club. It's led to student RFU opportunities like running this webinar, which is a big opportunity for me. And also we did a big fundraiser in February called FitFeb, where we exercise every day to raise money for Stonewall. And we've just hit, I think, £1,645. So that's a really, really cool for our club. And none of these opportunities would have happened without the pandemic. So I was wondering if anything kind of new and novel has happened for you guys and positives despite the pandemic.
Who wants to go first? Sara, what do you think? I'm interested for the referee's perspective. What's it been like? You've had such a different environment, haven't you, without the crowds and everything? Has that lent itself to opportunities for you or ways to develop, or has it been harder? Because we can hear everything you say now, can't we?
A bit of both, to be honest. Yeah, you can hear everything now. To a point, it's almost like hearing a pin drop in some of the stadiums. So it's not quite the same as the experience you get as a punter watching on the TV, because you have that little bit of filtered sort of crowd noise. Whereas when you're in the stadium, you can hear everything, which is interesting. And for me, like it's a different experience. So obviously, I made my Premiership debut as an AR whilst in the pandemic, which was unfortunate because I couldn't have kind of family and friends supporting, so they couldn't come to the game. And also you sort of have a different experience with no crowd in there. So it wasn't kind of the you know, at Bath where there's with a full stadium, there's a massive atmosphere and it's really cool. Whereas this time it was a little bit different. So there was a lot more sort of, I guess, emphasis on the actual game itself rather than the sort of outside noises as well. So it gave me an opportunity to be able to focus more on what was happening and not have anything sort of clouding that, if that makes sense. So it has positives and negatives. Obviously, lovely to have family supporting me, but at the same time, it gave me an opportunity to actually focus what was going on and be a part of that game and stay connected with that.
Just a really point that we've learned is about how we do things differently. So previously when we've been in camp, we'd have had meetings and done a lot of like delivery there, whereas actually now, because of COVID restrictions, you can't like have like face-to-face meetings in large groups, and just about how you maximize your time. So I think it was a feeling that when you got into camp, a lot of time was taken up about all the stuff off field, when actually the focus should be around how we're going to improve from a rugby perspective. So a lot of the stuff that we can do, like analysis stuff, come in prior to camp, those reviews, small group reviews, and we've actually probably spent more time as leadership group looking back and reviewing training prior to camp to be able to feed back and make an impact when we get into camp, rather than having to wait there. And obviously the world of Zoom and Teams now, which we never even knew existed, it just allows for a different mechanism of way of communicating. So actually, yeah, you can just be smarter around what you do, how you do it, and when you do it. And I think there's that balance of having in-person meetings to utilising what you have away via virtual stuff. But it's certainly been an opportunity to realise how we can work smarter, I think.
I think, sorry. I was just going to say, from my perspective, obviously at the universities, head of sport, obviously sport's taken a massive hit COVID-wise. Universities shut down March 27th last year, really haven't been back, to be honest, from any level of sport. And it struck me when I sort of was aware of doing this webinar, and I was sort of having to ask myself similar questions, it struck me that essentially having to manage the staff, so we've got about 140 sports staff at Northumbria, is a little bit like managing injured players in the last year, that they can't be involved in what they're normally doing. They're frustrated. Their motivation levels are really low, and how do you keep them involved when you're not running any sport? There's only so much planning you can do while the government still tells you can't actually deliver it. So one of the things we did was actually use them in different departments and across the university in different ways. So they would go and support the library as COVID marshals. They packed boxes that we took to students in self-isolation. We use them in, so I'm, for my sins, don't ask me why, I'm managing the COVID testing site at the university. It's in our arena. So a load of our staff are working in that site. And this isn't stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis, but it's something that sport lends itself to, and our attitude and commitment as rugby players or as anybody working in sport. You can operationalise anything. You know how to get things done. That's the bottom. I was literally told that we need people who know how to get things done, and we think sport will do it, and we have. And I genuinely think that that's been a real positive for relationship building across the university. So we're not just seen as, well, that's just sport, they like running around. Like literally, that's how we're seen. I think we're taken a bit more seriously now, but I think it's, I guess I've had to really look at staff and check out red flags as well for staff that are struggling. And I think we've probably all done that in our environments, whether it be with England, for you, Sarah, for teammates, for the rest of you teammates, flatmates, family, and actually work out how we can get them back engaged in life. And if we can do that through sport, fantastic. If it's got to be another way, then so be it. But it has felt a little bit like having a team of injured players or those that didn't make the squad. So long squad members and having to bring them in. I think that's probably, if we ever went into anything like this again, I think we'd probably now know how to react a little bit quicker to that and keep people involved.
Yeah, I was just going to say on your point, Sarah, about Zoom. I know a lot of us are experiencing Zoom fatigue, particularly us. We've been running our Wednesday socials we run it each Wednesday. It's normally in real life, and we'll have a bit of a social and go out to the club. So we've been running them on Zoom every single week. And it started off really fun, and it still is, but it's obviously each week it's like, I know the social sector drawing out what else can we run on Zoom this week, sorry. But it has led to a good opportunity, because girls that have gone home, or people that are isolating, or someone goes home for the weekend, they can still attend the social at home. And I think it's interesting to see how, I think once we don't have to be on Zoom, we'll definitely get out of it and kind of stop as much as we can. But now that we're used to running it and we've got that technology, if there's an opportunity where we could use Zoom, for example, it would have been really hard to get all of us in a room to come and have this discussion. But running on Zoom, Sarah can come straight off the rugby pitch and hop onto this. So it's interesting to see how this new technology could be used and how it has been beneficial.
Yeah, I've really found that actually with certainly you get invited to a lot of things more now that you can just hop online to it, and that's been really helpful for my learning. Like I've been invited to council meetings with all of the board and the council members of the RFU, and initially you would never have got that opportunity because you can't get that many people in the room. You have to fund it, you have to have people stay somewhere, and it's opened up so many good opportunities to be able to just sit on a Zoom call and actually chat to people that you would never chat to in your life. And obviously, like you said, with Wednesday socials, obviously I'd be in down the pub on a Wednesday. So instead of going down the pub, I'm sat on a Zoom call with some really cool people.
So I guess we'll move into the next question. And this is, when did you guys first see yourself as a leader? So you might need a bit of a moment to think about this. I was trying to think about it myself, and I can't really pinpoint a specific time because as I was growing up, I often ran for a lot of positions in school. And I realised that I liked representing people and being responsible for people. It's something I really enjoyed doing. But I think at uni, rugby really helped me realise the leadership role I like to play. So I haven't been a leader on the pitch yet, but I like kind of managing the whole club and being responsible for everybody in that sense. So yeah, I was wondering if there was a specific time you guys realised you enjoyed leadership and what it was about that.
I think from your point, Joy, is like, I guess, like at school, you probably get put in charge of like being the captain of your netball team or your rugby team or whatever it is. And I remember as a really young player being asked to captain a team, but I didn't actually know what that meant. It was like, oh, you get to be captain, brilliant, but actually you don't know the responsibility that falls within it. And it probably wasn't until I went to uni and I joined Lichfield, who were in the Premiership. And I played for a season, and I remember the coach in the pre-season coming and asking, so what I've been about 19, 20, and we had internationals in our team, and we had like players who had been at the club for probably like 10 years, like probably similar age to what I am now, like really senior experience. And he like asked me to be captain, and I was just like, I was almost like taken aback from it and like a little bit daunted to be like, well, I'm not old enough, I haven't done. I'm not as experienced, haven't played as many Premiership games. These girls have got international honours. Like, why would you ask me? And it wasn't probably until I had that conversation about what different people and different coaches want out of a leader and the qualities that they have, and then those attributes you have that fulfill that. So that was a real learning experience about the start of what leadership is and how you could fit in that. And then even as a captain now, I still feel like I'm developing as a leader. I'm learning about myself and how to get the best out of me as a leader, how to get the best out of your team. And I think it's an ever evolving process, but it was certainly that conversation that struck a chord just about what an actual leader is.
I think from a similar perspective, Sarah, is like very much a process, isn't it? And I still feel like I'm in the process of it, and it very much depends on the environment that I'm in and the people that I'm around. And it's definitely something that rugby's helped me develop. And starting at uni, kind of getting that chance to be pitch captain and things, you almost being given that opportunity to get outside of your comfort zone and see what you're capable of. Kind of helps you embrace that idea that you can be a leader, and like if you give your best in that situation, you can be quite good at it. But it's being given that opportunity in the right setting and almost being like a safe setting to step up and be that leader. Because I mean, say someone told me to be captain of England, like one, I can't catch a ball well enough to do it, but two, it would be too big a step up. I wouldn't have that confidence to do a good job. Almost, it's got to be like a stepwise opportunity and almost leaders in those situations to bring other people in the team, give other people in the team that exposure, almost give them like little chances to lead.
I think on that, Rosie, is that it's about whoever gives you a leadership opportunity, whether it's a coach, whether it's someone in the work environment, whatever it is that they're there to then support you and guide you and help you on that journey. And I think in my early days as like a leader, a captain, like that wasn't always the case. It's like, and I know like other people who felt this, it's like, oh, well, you're captain now, off you go. And it's like, actually, no, you do need that help and support to guide you and to develop you. So I think that's and I don't think usually probably the people that generally get put in leadership roles, I'd imagine, more often than not, don't always think that they're the best people or they're capable of doing that job, where actually that's probably one of the reasons that you'll have been asked to do that role in the first place.
There's a massive difference between being a leader and being a good leader. And I think when I was thinking about that, about when did I first feel lead, I've been bossy all my life and loud. And so as a child, I probably led everyone I was around, whether they liked it or not. And there's a difference between that and being really, when I think back, or how bolshy I was at school and stuff like that. And and you go through the times when you've actually been an appointed leader. And actually, that's kind of the time. So I was fortunate enough to captain England A. And I was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. I couldn't stop crying in the national anthem. I got really emotional. Sara was probably playing, it was in France, do you imagine? It was just, I just lost it, right, basically. And it was mortifying because I think everyone thought that I would be, you know, because I'm loud and people do listen to me. But I think there is a difference in that, and that's a learning curve. And I thought I'd be ready. I was like, yes, this is for me. And actually, I didn't have the substance for it. I actually needed people around me to lead. I couldn't do it all on my own, and I took it all on myself. I think probably the first time, I think it's the older you get, the more you realise how you lead is more significant than the number of times you're asked to do it. And I think probably the first time I felt like a leader was maybe with the BUCS, the Rugby Union SAG chair, the Sports Advisory Group chair. I mean, I was shocked to be asked to apply. I'm the first woman to do that. It was all men and me. I was there as the women's rep on the group, and then to become the chair. And it was a little bit like acting like mum in the group, because you know what it's like when everybody's, you know, got their own opinions, their own, you know, issues to look after and represent. And actually the first meeting, you know, it's like a deer in the headlights, but you take control of it. And like you just said there, Rosie, step by step, I was like, right, what can I control next meeting? The timings, how long people speak for, the agenda, all those different things. And then now it's second nature. And I honestly think there is that difference. If you're given an opportunity, you make the most of it. And you probably get it wrong at times. Like first opportunity, you'll get it wrong. And you look back and think, oh my God. But actually, the more you take that on board and build it up, just like you would as a player, just means you've got a bit of a toolkit to fall back on if you get into a difficult situation as a leader. And I think only then do you really truly know what type of leader you are, when you're put under challenge and difficult situations.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Like, you never know if you're going to be good for a role unless you go for it, and unless you're challenged, unless you challenge yourself. And whilst that question's quite hard, like no one looks at themselves and thinks I'm a good leader or I'm a successful leader. I think if 18-year-old you looked at you now, they would probably be quite impressed. And so like if 18-year-old you now was doing what you were doing, they'd probably struggle. And I think, like with Sara said, it's ever changing. So the more roles that you do, the more you grow and the more you learn, and the more your perception of leadership changes. And so a few years ago, when I was 18, I probably thought a leader was someone that was powerful and in charge and, you know, told people what to do, like Katy said. But now I look at people like Eddie Jones, who said that his job is essentially to let the players lead themselves. And I think that's such like a commendable role. But also, like Sara Cox could probably like comment on, the perception of referees and their dialect with players has completely changed. So we used to think leaders were people that said, you know, listen to me, I'm right and you're wrong. Whereas refs now will, you know, have a dialect with players and like communicate with players. And I think that's really interesting to look at leadership within the referee roles as well. And I think obviously you're quite a good person to talk about that.
No, it's definitely interesting, because you wouldn't really turn around and say a referee is a leader as such, because effectively you're not working with kind of 15 people on a pitch and you're the kind of spokesperson for that. But what you do is you do engage with other human beings, and like you say, is the dialogue that I can have with captains. So since I know, you know, I've worked with you in camp, but also I've been on the receiving end of you as a captain as well, and being able to have that dialogue and being able to engage with humans is very, very important, because I've also got stakeholders around that game. So take the TMO inside of things as well, is that I've got to be able to articulate myself and be able to tell you that story of what's happening all the way through what's going on. I'm really sorry, they're singing happy birthday in the background. I have no idea whose birthday it is either.
I think it's Lark's. I think it's Lark's birthday today, yeah.
Yeah, Lark's gone pretty red, so.
Should we help Coxie out here? I agree. I think it's really important, like as a to be able to have those relationships with the referees, in terms of also like referees have got to manage. Like often you'll go up and be like, oh, the assistant referee, like they're not doing anything. And it's like, so you've got that team of officials that they're trying to manage and they're trying to manage you. So I think like what you're saying is like is so important, that I think leadership isn't just having a title to be like you're a captain or you're in charge of this. I think leadership comes in many roles, and I think referees certainly have have a very important role in leading and managing a game and managing the players around them, and sometimes I guess that's harder than others, but I think that dialect and that development of how referees now are compared to even 5-6 years ago is massive.
Yeah, and just to touch on that point, I sort of do drop in, I guess, into the leadership role as well as with my match day team. So I've got 2 assistant referees and sometimes lucky enough to have a TMO as well, is that I've got to be able to engage them and I've got to be able to take them on the journey that I'm going through within the game, because there's all sorts of different aspects. So if those people, when they work with me, don't feel that they can communicate with me, then that, I'm already on the back foot and I'm already not able to kind of cover all sides of the game. So it's really important to be able to have that dialogue and that engagement and that relationship with other people, because sometimes as well as my team will change every single weekend. So again, it's about how do you re-engage other people? How do you start working with people you've never seen before? How do you sort of get yourselves on a level playground that you can challenge each other as well? Because there's going to be times in a match that I need my assistant referee to challenge a decision that I've made, because potentially it's not going down the right route. Right down the right route. So again, like you say, there is an aspect of leadership, but I guess we wouldn't necessarily always sort of quantify ourselves as that. We sort of just go about our business and do stuff without realising it, I guess.
I know a couple of us were kind of speaking about how we can encourage others to kind of recognise their own leadership potential. I guess some of us were saying we didn't quite recognise it in ourselves. So we've obviously realised it in ourselves. So what kind of ways do you think that we can help others to develop potential leadership traits they have and potential that we see in them? So, for example, for me, this girl, there's been a new guy to the club who I think would be really, really good on committee. She's so committed to the club. She's always motivated and she's always getting engaged with everything. And I think she'd be really, really good. So I just dropped her a message, basically just to kind of boost her confidence and kind of empower her that actually you could run for a leadership position, even though you're new to the club. So is there any kind of experiences you guys have had with that, of empowering other people to develop their own leadership traits?
That's exactly what you just said is the advice I would give. I got asked it recently. Someone was doing a PhD on women's leadership in sport, and it was the only thing that will ready anybody for leadership is new opportunities and putting yourself outside your comfort zone. That's just, it's a fact. And until you take that first step, you'll never know, like we were talking about before, Rosie, are you capable of that? I think it's putting yourself in an environment. I often encourage people to shadow. So even if they're not prepared to run for something, just say, do you want to go along and see, just even how a committee works. So if they've not been on a committee meeting at a particular level, they might think, oh, that's too much for me. If you were able to go along and shadow, and then you thought, well, actually, I could have said something there. And actually, what you fast realise in any level that you move up to as a leader is you do fit in. Nobody's superhuman. So you get to that level and you think, actually, I do know a little bit about this. I could make a comment. And I just think the biggest barrier is the unknown. Is thinking there's a big room. We talk about the RFU Council. It's a big room at Twickenham where they meet with a big door and you think, God, that's really scary. Actually, in there, everybody has the same level of experience and passion for the game, and it's about contributing it. So for me, it's always about get yourself on as many groups as you can, as many opportunities as you can, and trust the fact that people want to hear what you have to say. Because I think that for me is the confidence. If you think you know something that's going to help that and benefit the conversation, say it. And until then, no one will notice you. And that's the point. And all of a sudden, somebody goes, actually, just like you did with the new player, she's got something really good to say. She's got real potential. And then you get offered additional opportunities. But you've got to get out of your comfort zone first.
Yeah, no, that was a massive point for me. So I ran for social sec in my second year. And it sounds silly, but I didn't realise that the girls on committee even ran the club. I knew that they all had roles, but I kind of thought the uni organised the whole club, and I suddenly saw this whole new side to the club and how complicated it was. And I learned a bit about that in my role as social sec. And then this year, becoming club captain, I've seen that developed even more and more. So definitely that the kind of role of the stepping stones moving up to bigger leadership positions was really useful for me personally as well.
Just on the point of shadowing, Katy, from like a medicine perspective, that's exactly how we do it. Like at every stage of learning, whether you're kind of a first year medical student shadowing sort of an older medical student, or like me now, a final year medical student shadowing the junior doctors, or the junior doctors shadowing the regs. Like it's literally a really comfortable kind of step at each stage. And and then giving you like little nuggets of responsibility at each stage to kind of, oh, what would you do in this situation? And then you're kind of gaining your confidence, but in a safe environment, because obviously it's people's lives and stuff. You don't want to be just having a guess and having a wing at it. But yeah, at each stage it's kind of what would you do, and then working on whether that's the right thing to do. And that's exactly how we learn kind of the whole way through.
Yeah, I think it's really important to give people that confidence to want to lead and to want to be heard as well, especially in a rugby context. I guess like everyone, I think like it has an opinion and has a voice and probably has a good voice to be done that. But like sometimes if they're a younger player, they might be unsure of being able to speak up or like to speak in front of people. So it's trying to find a mechanism and a way of doing that and encourage them. So I had a conversation with one of our players at Loughborough this week, and she had a really good view and the right view on reflection on some of our performance from the weekend. And she was like, oh, I didn't really want to say that in front of everyone. And I was just like, but it's the right thing to do, and like I'll support you and back you up with that. But it's really important that people hear it, because it would probably come as not as a shock, but a surprise coming from that player, because she's normally quite quiet. But I was like, it's important that you start to voice those opinions, because she potentially might have a leadership role within sort of the under-20s pathway as well. And it's like, how do you make people feel? And almost once they say something, especially if it's the right thing, to be like, no, you're exactly right with that. So then they feel comfortable that actually they're being supported in that decision. So next time they might feel more confident and comfortable to be able to just say it themselves without having that pre-conversation, to then know that someone's going to support them, that actually people value what you say. And I think that's the real key thing for me, especially for people that maybe don't speak up too often, is that when they do speak, they are heard, and they're speaking because actually they want to get a really key point across. And I think it's just making people feel, and it's being comfortable being in that uncomfortable situation, especially if you're a young leader. You don't need titles to lead either. And I think people also need to find ways in which they're comfortable. So for me, like, I'm very much a person that leads by actions and lead by example and by the standards I set. I might not give the world's best Churchillian speeches or anything like that, but I think people, again, you kind of need to find the area in which you're authentic, because that's why people will follow leaders. And Katy said, you can be a leader or you can be a good leader. And I think for me, it's the authenticity you have about yourself, and people generally want to follow you because actually of the values of how you are and how you're true to what you're doing. You're authentic, you're genuine, rather than trying to be someone that you're not, or just go, well, this person is a really good leader, and it could be from any sort of walk of life, and be like, well, I want to be them. Well, if that doesn't fit you naturally, actually you're probably not going to end up being a good leader for what you want to do.
I think with Rosie, you said there about the medical profession as well. I think it's with it, as going off what Santa said, it's within our role as leaders to develop other leaders. And I think you're a really poor leader if you don't do that. And it's about, once you are in that position where people are listening to you, it's about making sure other people are heard. And in the medical profession, my wife's a doctor, and it amazes me the structure that they have, which is so good, that you have to teach others at every step of the way. It's not paid extra, it's just expected. And I was like, well, how do they train you? So you don't need training to do it. You're passing on your experience, and you're asking somebody else what they think. And you're also encouraged to speak up in medicine. It's to prevent mistakes, etc., but to encourage collaborative thinking. But there's some really strong learning points actually for medicine, and how they treat their kind of system of developing senior doctors and medical professionals, that I think is fantastic. And I do that a lot more now, in that if I'm having a meeting on a project, a externally funded project, for example, at the university, you say, well, this is used to this, but this is a strategic meeting. Well, why wouldn't I invite the people that are going to deliver it? why wouldn't I have them have passing comment originally? Why does it have to be top down? So it's all the different things we can do as leaders. Is like you said, the nuggets of responsibility. I can't remember who was saying that. That's really key, and it can be tiny little things. But if someone can shine doing that, they will speak up next time, and they'll volunteer themselves next time. And I do think sometimes just opening up an opportunity, saying, "I've got this on offer. Is anybody interested in helping me with this?" And often it can just be helping out with something. And I think you'll be surprised at the people that step forward. And I think that's often the best bit about leadership, is discovering somebody that actually really wants to do something else, where you might have always just assumed it was the most obvious candidates, and it's others. But I think it is our responsibility to develop others as well.
Katy, it's interesting that you say about medicine and challenging each other. So obviously within refereeing, we get challenged quite a lot, and we definitely do that in our review as well. And a part of my masters, I actually took what they use within medicine, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is your CRM system, and looked at how I can manipulate that and put that into a refereeing context. And again, to get that sort of flattening of hierarchy, so that there's not always one person sort of spearheading everything, but instead we all feel comfortable to be able to talk, to be able to challenge each other, and be in that environment that you can do that. Because I know sometimes, like we're saying about empowering people, and I think sometimes, you know, if I'm an experienced referee and I've got two less experienced assistant referees, well, do they feel comfortable with me and the way that I'm portraying myself to challenge me when I've got something wrong? Because that can be the pivot point in a game sometimes of you know, teams winning and losing, and looking at the decisions and how that works. So yeah, that's definitely something that I know I really try to do, is make sure that I can identify ways that I can empower people to work in that match day team.
So there's been some so there's been some really interesting points there about how we can empower others in leadership positions. So just quickly moving back to our own selves in leadership positions. One of the questions I kind of asked you guys to think about was a specific moment when you guys were in a leadership position that was a best experience for you. So I'll put someone on the spot. Let's go. Kirsten, is there a particular moment you remember in a leadership position that was a really good experience for you, or something you could speak about?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, a really cool thing we have, opportunity we have in the National Youth Council, is recognising lots of young people that like volunteer within the game. And I've found that so rewarding, being able to, so every year we get a grant from Mitsubishi to host an awards evening, and we usually invite an England international like Dylan Hartley to present awards. And then last year we're going to do it at the Rico in Coventry, so that the young people could go have a dinner and watch a Wasps game. And unfortunately we didn't get to do that because of COVID, but having that opportunity, that sort of that gift to like reward people, like to say thank you, it's so nice, because so many people give up their time and sometimes they don't get rewarded. And for, like, if you're recognizing 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, it feels so good to like give them that experience in their formative years, because that little experience could then lead on to them keep progressing and keep getting involved. And that was really one of my favorite opportunities to do.
That's lovely. Anyone else got a specific leadership experience? I'm sure both Sarah's, you've got a load to speak about.
I think away from off field, in terms of a bit similar to Kirsten's, is obviously COVID's been a challenge, and we got to go to Italy for our final Six Nations game, and unfortunately the week before I obviously picked up a hamstring injury, so I wasn't able to play, but I was still lucky enough to go out, and obviously it was brilliant that we got to finish it, got to Grand Slam, but it was almost a bit of a anti-climax, because as Sara was saying, that like when she got to do the AR stuff for first Premiership game, like there was no one there. So similarly, there was no fans, there was no friends or family, and the year before we've really tried to include our friends and family, because they're a huge part of like our success. And we had like a really great friends and family thing at Twickenham, like after winning the Grand Slam the year before, and it was a bit like, oh, we've got nothing. So we actually used Zoom, and it was a bit of a very last minute thing, and I wasn't playing, and we were just chatting around like how we can make it a bit more special and get the friends and family. So I spent my time getting in contact on our friends parents, friends and family group, which is the cutest group ever. Like, I'm not normally on it, but I like managed to wangle my way on, and the messages the parents and friends and family send is like so lovely. Probably too much to be on it like all the time, but just ask them to join a Zoom call. And we all, like, with Natasha Hunt's help, made like a little video of like basically congratulations, well done, whatever, like put it together. And we had this like friends and family thing after the Six Nations, and we also had changed a lot of staff, so we invited all the staff that had been part of it. And I think there was first cap as well, so obviously that's a very special moment for people's parents. They couldn't be there, so it's like, well, how can we make everyone be together? And again, it's not a rugby related thing, but I think part of a leadership role is about sort of off-field stuff as well, especially with captaincy and trying to bring the squad together, trying to celebrate everything from those people. So I think in the last year, that's probably been that, although it got to be quite a bit of a lot of work, it was very last minute, actually what it meant, not only to the players, but the parents, and you having to mute them because they're on and they've probably all had one drink too many. Like, it was actually really like, and all the comments after it was about like how nice it was to be able to share those moments, and especially people getting their first caps and stuff like that. I think that was probably something, like, at the time you're like, well, why have I started this? But actually to see what it meant to people afterwards, and to sort of take that role of organising it, I think were like, I was quite pleased I actually like made the effort to do that.
Anyone else got a specific point that they can speak about, or we'll move on to the next question?
Go with the next one. Go on.
Okay, so we'll move to basically kind of the final topic, which is basically about what we think about kind of gender equality and opportunities for males and females in sport. So do you guys think that there are equal opportunities for men and women in leadership, specifically in sport today? And do you think that kind of women's sport will ever reach the same engagement? And what can we do as leaders and as women in rugby to kind of help reach this equality in sport as leaders? It's a big question, I know.
I got asked this again recently, actually, for something else, and I think the honest answer is no. There's not equality, there's not equity, it's not parity, however you want to put it. I think it is getting there, which is probably the most important thing, if I'm honest. We're not going backwards, we're not standing still, it's getting there. I think there is equality at certain levels within sport, so not within every area of sport. So if we take, you look at officiating, you look at performance, there's a really big gap there. If you look at grassroots, if you look at sport development, then the balance is much more even. And I think even when you talk about participation or even leadership roles at a club level, if you take a university, for example, sometimes it's more female participation than male. So if we get that right at a university, it's probably more about how we learn from that microcosm of community and how we take it out more broadly. It just seems to happen that way. Is it because they're more empowered? Is it because the university itself has no funding discrepancies? It's just sport, whether it's male or female, it doesn't really matter, perhaps. And I do think that there's an awful lot of that and how we get to hold it, but we don't hold that once we go beyond university. Women stop volunteering, they stop playing, they stop taking on leadership roles. And it's not always about having a family. It's about, once they step into the next realm, do they feel welcomed? Do they feel wanted? Do they feel valued? Is there a role for them? So I think the pressure really is on the organisations that deliver sport to develop roles where women feel valued and welcomed in fulfilling them, and they don't have to fight to be heard. We've talked all through this today about being heard, being listened to, and I think often you end up with the women that make it through this glass ceiling, or whatever you want to call it, are those that fought to be heard or led by extremely excellent example, if you like. But it shouldn't be as hard as it is. That'd be my opinion. It's hard, it's possible, it's just harder. And I know that Sara and you guys will have other experiences, but that's at my old age of 41, that's what I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Katie. I think at the grassroots level, I think there's definitely so many equal opportunities and opportunities out there. But as you go up, I think there's more barriers to entry, or things that cause people to not perhaps to volunteer and then perhaps drop out. I've obviously got a good experience from Loughborough and Leicestershire, fantastic at getting opportunities out there. But when I go home to Sussex, I see no opportunities. And so I think some barriers are self-imposed. Sometimes, like we've been speaking about, we don't have confidence in ourselves to take on a role, and we're scared to not perform as well as others. But also some barriers are external, and they're based around a constituent body's ability to advertise a role to women, or when a woman get into those roles, do they feel comfortable? Exactly like Katy said. I think through my roles as a referee and as a young referee and a female referee, obviously, I've had very different treatment as a young female. My first game, I was changing in a storage cupboard, and I had my male assessor walking on me changing, which is very funny, obviously. But I doubt that would ever happen to a guy, because he can get changed in with all the other referees, and just things like that, which completely change your whole experience. And if you don't have good experiences in your early years, you're not going to continue. And if you didn't have that confidence in yourself and that belief that I'm going to make it, like you just said, you're going to drop out, and you're not going to get these younger people coming through because they won't see any role models above them. I
think that's a really pertinent point that you say, Kirsten, is about role models. And I know for me, being one of very few, I really drive to make sure that's something that I give back to the game. So I want to make sure that people can see it, and especially for yourself as well, is you're a female referee. If you can't see other female referees, how do you know that you can be that? And how do you know that that's a possibility that could be your job? And that's the important bit for me, is starting to really push that out and just make it known and say, okay, well, this wasn't something that happened in the past, but it's happening now. And I think it's really important that we as advocates and the face of females in sport don't stand still either. We keep pushing and we keep driving to go through. And I know what it's like to tread brand new ground, and I know what it's like to sort of be a minority in doing that. But if you don't keep going, how is it that anyone else behind me can see that and can follow that route as well? So if out the back of this, and I retire in how many years' time, I am getting on a bit now, but however many years it is that I get to a point where I retire, if one person turns around and says, I paid more attention to rugby because I saw her, I think I've done my job, and that can be male or female. And I am definitely a massive advocate of people that do jobs behind the scenes as well, to allow me to do my job on the field. Because without some of the setup that we have within the RFU, with regards to media, commercial, with regards to sponsorship relationships, how can I be out on a rugby pitch and be in the position that basically puts me there? So it's about understanding the whole game. You don't just have to be a player, you don't have to be a coach, you don't have to be a referee, but you can also be a part of media teams, of marketing teams, and still have a massive impact and a massive influence on other people. I think those are the important bits, and we get that real broadened scope, and we touch every corner of businesses, and we take some of that into new businesses as well.
So we're nearly running out of time, guys. Is there any more kind of last thoughts on equality before we wrap things up?
I think it's been nailed. I think it's moving in the right direction. It's not where it needs to be, but like Coxie's exactly right. You need people, or females, to be visible and to talk about it and to say the job they're doing and what they're doing, and be seen, be heard, to make that change, and to keep ensuring people that are decision makers, to allow women to have roles, make those decisions to make it more equitable. But it's better than it was. It's not where it needs to be.
But the one thing on that, the one thing drives it all, it's a real bugbear for me, and actually showed today. So the announcement on the BBC about the Women's World Cup being postponed, Santa, right? The photo they chose to use on the app was you hugging another player looking upset. If that had been the Men's World Cup being postponed, they wouldn't have shown a male player hugging another player looking upset. They'd have shown an action shot. I'm not wrong there. It really got to me. I was like, why can't we show women in the same light when they're doing the same job? And I think until we get that, we're not going to move on. And that really frustrates me. And you'll hear sports, I don't mean commentators, I mean just interviewing on, for example, Radio 4, and they'll change their tone of voice when they're speaking to female athletes. And those are the things that I think, until we can change that at the core of it, how do we change anything else? And like I said, we are getting there, but it's how people still perceive women within sport as seeing them as unusual. And if they're treated as unusual, then younger people, younger girls, women will see it as I'm following an unusual path rather than, yeah, I'm just going to go and be a professional athlete, or I'm just going to go and be a referee. And I think that's the key. We've got to be able to change people's perception of it. It is not unusual. It just is what it is. I get angry about that. Sorry, that was what I felt this morning on that picture, Santa. That was all.
It does have to be the norm, doesn't it?
Yep.
Like, it does have to be the norm that.
Doesn't have to be the same numbers in it. Doesn't have to be the same for it to be treated as normal.
No.
That's what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes it feels like you've almost got to prove yourself as a woman in sport. But to kind of end on a really positive note, one thing I can say is I see massively in the last year, our club's membership has increased massively. We went up from, I think, 76 members last year to 91 this year.
Wow.
And this is during the pandemic. And I think rugby specifically, we're seeing in the last few years how many more girls are engaging and are kind of proving to themselves, yeah, I can be a female and play sport, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that in front of everybody and kind of be proud of it. So hopefully we are moving in the right direction. I've definitely experienced that in my last few years. So yeah, thank you so much to you guys, to the panel, for coming today. This has been really interesting, and hopefully everyone who's been watching has enjoyed it. I know I have, and it's been great to speak to you guys about your experiences. And thank you everybody for watching. And those of you who are watching, I just want to remind you to keep an eye out on the Student RFU for the Student RFU Awards, which will be on social media soon, and there'll also be some emails about that. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.